Welcome to the Odd Ones Out podcast. If you ever feel like you're on the outside looking in, you are not alone. Let's challenge our limiting beliefs and embrace who we truly are. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Odd Ones Out podcast. I'm Becky, this is Maz.
Hello, everybody.
And we are talking negativity. Very doom and gloom, isn't it, when you're talking about a topic that's so negative? But this is one of my driving behaviours. Hands up, it's one of my driving behaviours, something that holds me back every day from reaching my full potential. I'm miserable, I never smile, I'm always doom and gloom, and that's it, the end of the episode.
I don't think, there you go. I don't think that's true, but this is one you've really been looking forward to.
Oh, I really didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
But then saying that, I didn't want to do the food addiction and I didn't want to do anger. So it's the same thing. It just sounds miserable. It sounds like I'm a miserable fuck who just refuses to see the positive in life. And that's not really true, but at the same time it is. I don't know.
But that's the point. We're getting all this stuff done and out of the way, and then everything's going to smell of roses and be amazing and all that.
Okay, well, I'm going to take a step back and take the pressure off my shoulders and point out that it's not just me. I want to make this kind of macro trend wider context before I talk about me, because let's face it, this world thrives on negativity.
Oh, it does, yeah.
Come on, it's like clickbait, all negative, media, all negative. They're the bits that they'll highlight and showcase at the beginning, and they tend to be the negative stories. The more negative, the bigger, the better, the more dramatic, amazing, everyone's going to pay attention. You have conversations with a friend or someone you hardly know. It's like, how are you? You're not going to jump into saying, I'm really well, this is amazing and amazing, because you might be showing off.
Well, yeah, that's true. I was going to say why not, but then...
Because you might be showing off.
Nah, well.
I can't speak for the rest of the world. I can speak for us Brits.
I count as half a Brit, so maybe I can
that's
see
why I paused, because I was thinking, hang on a second. It's us, both of us. But anyway, that we love a moan. We do. We love a moan. We bond over moaning. So I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to take the pressure off my shoulders by saying, to a certain degree, the large proportion, just in case you're listening and you say, I don't do this, I'm sticking up for you by saying it's not necessarily you, but the large proportion of society is negative. The problem that I have is that I don't want to be influenced by this environment that we have, and also to proactively drive it myself. It is holding me back on so many different levels that the lens I tend to look at life with is negative.
Well, and I think where it sort of concerns you is, as you say, a lot of, especially in the UK, a lot of society is driven by negativity, and negativity sells. But I think for you, it kind of goes a bit beyond that, because we're talking generally how our root convictions drive that negativity. So how do you think your root conviction really keeps that going or maintains it beyond just the average person who likes a moan?
I think there's a childhood behaviour there, in as much as if I don't feel good enough, I'm not good enough, belligerence or a sense of resentment about not being good enough kicks in. Right. And that belligerence and that resentment and that, I suppose, I don't know, jealousy to a certain degree of other people who are having a time where they are appreciated, or the parents are nurturing them really well. You know, those things can end up driving a negative lens. Yeah. Because I then start building assumptions. So rather than that person didn't hear me say their name, it's, oh, they don't like me. You know, it kind of feeds in one with the other, if you like, the not being good enough from a negative perspective, obviously it's negative, to how I then view the world and my assumptions about an occurrence or a situation. It tends to have that grey, the grey lens in terms of the way I look at things.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was just thinking when you were talking about the social acceptance of negativity, in a way that probably your kind of childhood trauma plays into that, because I suppose there's no real on the surface, no real motivation to do something with it because it's socially acceptable. It's all around you.
Yeah.
It feels like the norm. But I think the trouble is, especially for someone like you, is that it really, I think it serves a purpose in that it probably is familiar, and in a way it keeps you safe. I mean, who doesn't like making assumptions? If you make assumptions, it means it feels like you're more in control.
Yeah, it's true, but it's a similar thing with the food addiction.
Yeah.
That you've got comfort food for the soul or soul food, and celebratory food, and food is there at the centre of a lot of things. There are cultures, and so you've got the religions like Judaism, or cultures in terms of geographical, the way people live, and we all say, we love feeding people, we all get around the table. So I could argue that as somebody who's addicted to food, I'm just playing into the environment. But the problem is, the knock-on effect is that, guess what? I've got fat. And then that makes me feel awful. And I'm not, ultimately, I use it to the point where I'm abusing food and I'm hiding away.
Yeah.
Whereas the negativity, I can console myself by saying, well, everyone's negative. But at the same time, the knock-on is, I'm just not as happy as I could be. Yeah. I can enjoy a day, an event, a conversation. I can feel proud of myself. I can laugh with you and the girls and my friends and family. So it's not like I am just miserable, low mood, depressed. The negativity is something slightly different. It's like I suppose it is a sense of control, but also a cocoon. I get to, I don't know, it's a layer of protection, like a cellophane layer of protection, where if I see things as negative, I'm not going to get hurt because I've already set myself up knowing that there might not be a positive thing from it. I don't know.
Because I suppose that in a way the negative things that happened to you when you were a kid, you never really got any closure or proper resolution. So in a way, perhaps those negative things, those negative memories are sort of suspended somewhere in your head. And so it kind of makes sense that you'd keep coming back to them, because it's not. I think if people in general, if you get some sort of closure, or if you can put something behind you, you're able then to look at things with more balance, and you don't need to anticipate the negative. But I think in a real sense, that negativity is there. Maybe not at the forefront of your mind, but there in the background. So you keep referring back to it because you probably never really. You never resolved it, and to some extent, I think you still don't know what to make of it.
No, and sometimes I don't realise it's there.
Yeah.
We can all wake up and get out of bed out of the wrong side, but it can take me. When I wake up, I need to go for a run. I need to have time to just sit and be on my own in my own head before the rest of the world, the household wakes up. Because if I get that, I can set myself up on a path of being cheerful. And I'm not depressed. And I'm not, I know it sounds like I am.
Keep telling yourself that.
No, I'm trying to explain. It's a bit of an effort not to immediately assume that something needs to be looked at through a negative lens. So I've conditioned myself over time to have this, everything's negative, and now I don't want that anymore. So I'm having to unpick it. So I'm having to learn new behaviours and new habits so that I can be me rather than me with a chip on my shoulder.
And I think, to me anyway, the big part of that is switching from assuming that you have to cope with life to thriving.
Yeah.
Because if your whole thing, and it makes complete sense, having positive sort of influential behaviours like going running or whatever it is, and knowing that those things help you is it's a good thing. But you're doing it on the basis that you'll struggle if you don't.
But I feel like I do. On a Sunday, for example, when I don't go for a run and I wake up, I find it really difficult not to be grumpy. Not to, I don't know, just be like, ugh. I mean, you'll say, it grates on you, the amount of times I sigh. And most of the time I don't even realise I'm doing it because I'm walking around, I'm like, oh, I've got to do that. Oh, I've got to do this. Oh, I've got to do that. Sigh. But I don't realise I'm doing it at all. And I feel cheerful. And yet I'm sighing. I
think, isn't it because you sort of assimilated that message when you were younger, that you, not just that you weren't good enough, but at some point that you can't really cope with the little difficulties of everyday life. Like you
everything's an effort.
You need to anesthetize yourself, or you need to distract yourself, or your bottom line. Another bottom line could be that you feel that life, even if it's on a low level, is difficult, and that you need to do everything you can to sort of ameliorate that or do something with it.
And I found that if I look back, because this is the problem, I can look back at my life, and the things that stand out the most are the challenges.
Well, they would do, because
negative, but they are. The milestones tend to be the things I've overcome. But so it's not like a milestone in terms of, oh yeah, I did this one, I loved that, and this was a great holiday, and this is when I met this friend or met you. Unfortunately, it's that's when we had to go through IVF. That's when I was told I needed that extra help. That's when I lost that job. That's when my dad died. It's all my milestones, and my life is kind of, when I look back, that all of the negative things stand out. I find negativity compelling. It's far stronger an emotion, a pull, in terms of, just like the clickbait. I mean, maybe it is for everybody, I don't know, but it's far stronger a pull in terms of my attention than something that's positive. And I don't want that. That, for me, is holding me back from reaching my full potential, because, as you say, I want to thrive. I want to embrace life. I want it to be happy and cheerful, sincerely, rather than having to put a bit of extra energy and effort into achieving that mindset each day.
How, I was just thinking, how, beyond, obviously, when you feel negative, or when you're particularly aware of the negativity, obviously it makes you feel like shit. But what else? How else does it make you feel? Because there must be something.
Control. Definitely. I know what to expect. I know what's going on. But
is there a bit of I suppose what I'm getting at is it kind of in keeping maybe with your. I mean, I can't speak for other people, but your personality. I think a lot of the way you live life, even if it's to a lower degree, is quite fight or flight.
Yes.
So are you getting that kind of sensation from negativity and having to overcome it, maybe?
Yeah, well, I find throughout my life, I have found a sense of achievement, of having resilience, of having a challenge to overcome.
And you said it was compelling, which I thought was...
Yeah, that's true. So
maybe,
I don't know, maybe I'm putting challenges in my way when they aren't there because I've hardwired to overcoming something.
Or just prioritizing them and putting them on a pedestal. I don't think, having known you for 17 years, you certainly, I think you rarely put a challenge in front of you for the thrill of it.
No.
But I think you focus more keenly and you pay more attention when you're overcoming something, because I think you probably do get a sense of achievement from it. So it's the negativity, but also the chance for some resolution and for some mini closure. And
I suppose feeling positive and feeling happy are great feelings, and it's nice to smile, but for some there's not as much strength in that feeling.
Do you remember, going back to childhood, do you remember a point when you felt positivity or feeling cheerful, or those kind of emotions felt a bit more substantial? Or have they always been a bit...
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they were dampened down. My mum is very negative.
Yeah.
I love you, Mum. But you're very negative. And that kind of passive-aggressive or dismissive kind of negativity, which is quite insidious. It's not that she is a miserable person at all.
No.
But there is that level of negativity, which as a child, when your parents are the world revolves around your parents and you, that you can't help but pick up on. So I don't remember having a sincere sense of kind of unbridled joy and happiness, because I do believe that early on that might have been squashed.
Yeah.
Not on purpose. I have to stress that. Mum wouldn't have done it on purpose, and Dad was hardly around, so I can't bring him into it. But it's more, maybe I learnt the behaviour that negativity and overcoming it is important.
Yeah.
And it's something that you could add a string to your bow if you've managed to achieve XYZ against adversity or whatever it might. I don't know.
Sounds very solid and responsible and grown up.
and miserable. But the thing is, I'm going to stand up for myself like I did in the anger podcast. I'm episode. I don't think that the majority of people would consider me a negative person. And that's not because I just hide it. It's because I'm not, it's not intrinsically me. It's just the lens that I view life as. So there'll be times where you and I will spot someone and quite judgmentally say, oh yeah, that person cries themselves to sleep, because you can see that they're putting that smile on. It's completely fake, and they seem quite like, I don't know, they're teetering, and it's not happening for them today. And you're like, they're really struggling. Whereas I don't have that, fortunately, thank goodness. Mine is more, oh, here's another thing, and oh, there's another thing. And so just like the sighing in terms of moving things around the house, it will be, I have a bucket and I carry it around with me. And if anything happens that isn't what I wanted or goes against being cheerful or happy or anything else, it's easily knocked. And it's easy to overflow because I take that baggage with me, this really big bag, bucket, whatever one wants to call it, of negativity. I carry it. I bring it. So it's not like I wake up in the morning and it's just an empty bucket and I'll see what happens in the day. It's already full because I carry everything that I've had to deal with or have felt I've had to deal with me. And then the next thing comes in, it's sort of like, oh goodness, that was only small. Just look at it and then brush it to one side. It's actually that small thing has gone into a full bucket already. The bucket's now overflowed. Oh, end of the world is here. Oh, what a problem.
Yeah, but I wonder whether, I mean, maybe not everybody has that, but I wonder if most people carry that bucket with them. It's just that their focus isn't so keenly on that bucket and everything relating to that bucket.
Oh, woe is me, pity.
Yeah, no, but I think it's an important part of it. And I wonder if other people probably, I'm sure they relate to you. If you're waking up and the first thing you're thinking about subconsciously is that bucket, then of course everything's going to be measured according to sort of how full that kind of bucket is and whether it's overflowing, whether you've emptied it a bit. But I wonder, have you ever found, even if it's just fleeting, sort of a way of not focusing on it?
Well, I tried for quite a while having a gratitude diary at the end of the day. Things that I could focus on that, obviously it's self-explanatory, but things I could be grateful for, things that I was happy about, things that had happened during the day that were positive.
Yeah.
So that I could go to sleep with a sense of positivity and cheerfulness. But the point is that although that was really nice, it wasn't a strong counterweight to that negativity. And the next day, but to be fair, the next morning I might feel a bit lighter, but the bucket would still be there. And I think one of the key things that I've had to do is to just ignore it, to focus. I have to be cheerful today.
But does that work?
Sometimes. Depends if I'm hormonal or not. Be honest.
Well, that's another thing altogether.
Yay, let's cover that one day. But no, I think so. It depends on the day. It just does. I can tell myself I really want to be cheerful. You know, what do I want out of life? I want it to be cheerful. I want it to be light, not just on the scales, but in terms of mood. I want to see the world for what it is and just treat each thing that comes my way for itself in its entirety, rather than it adding to a pile, particularly if that pile is negative. Just deal with it, move on, deal with it, move on. And obviously if it's something positive, then that would be lovely to add to a pile and then just slowly build up that resilience through positivity and happiness. But it's just easier said than done when my nurture as a child showed me that negativity in some way or form was important, and I just can't seem to crack it now. Now, when I spend time with someone who's negative, it really weighs me down because I've already got mine to carry. And because I'm a bit of a sponge, if somebody else is being negative, I can't help but take that on board, and it adds to mine, and that weighs me down even more. That might trigger my food addiction. It might make me feel angry. So I try to distance myself as much as possible from others who are negative. because it really doesn't help. So it's a bonus for me that however hard you might find life sometimes, actually you're an optimist. You do everything you can to be cheerful, and in a way I need that. My best friend, I call him a rubber ball. It doesn't matter what life throws at him, he will always bounce back from it and always try and be cheerful. I'm drawn to those people because I feed off it. It helps. If I'm having a negative day, if someone else is cheerful, I don't bring them down, they pull me up, even if it feels like an effort to them. Sorry.
Yeah, but I think sometimes the way you see it, to me, is you put pressure on yourself the other way. So you say, which is completely understandable. You want to be cheerful, you want to be light, you want to be, but that's a big responsibility to put on yourself, because you're saying that you want all of those things, but almost reading between the lines at the expense of all that like you don't want any of that negativity. You just want to be cheerful, you want to be light, but that's not. I don't know if that's realistic. I mean, I obviously I have my kind of moments and I feel down and I'm not always optimistic, but the one thing I try and do is to see, you talked about your bucket, there's a bucket right next to it that's positive, and it's trying not to over focus on one at the expense of the other. They're just there, and you're accumulating experiences, you're accumulating reactions to things, you learn things, but it's all the same. It's not. I don't want to sort of separate them, because if the minute you separate them, it's far easier to go, oh, that particular thing over there is more compelling.
Yeah, it's true.
But really, you've been accumulating the good experiences all this time. It's out of sight. So you're going to have a mixture of good and bad, but it's not giving either the preferential treatment or over-focusing on.
Which is a habit thing.
Yeah, of course.
How do you not get drawn into negativity? Because I don't watch the news. I just don't. I can't. I will pick up on, I'll read a few bits and pieces just to get the headlines, because it's my job to know what's going on in the world. And it's not my job to know what's going on in the world, otherwise I'd watch the news. But it's part and parcel of what I do, is to understand what the macro trends are, or micro trends, or whatever. Yeah. I have to, otherwise I couldn't do my job well enough. But I can't watch the news. I can't listen. In fact, if the news comes on the radio, I will listen to it twice a week. Otherwise I'll switch off, because it's always negative and it brings me down, and I don't want that. But do you do that? Do you do more? I mean, how do you manage to not be negative or find it compelling?
I do keep tabs on the news, but probably not even as much as the average person does. But it kind of, I'm vaguely aware of what's going on all the time. I take some interest. I think what helps me, weirdly, is probably my overthinking, and being able to kind of go, okay, really the reason they're publishing this particular thing is because they're trying to get people and reel them in. So if you look at a paper and all the stories are about someone being murdered or somebody disappearing, or even to a lesser extent, they photograph some poor celebrity who's just on their holidays and they've got their sort of top off and they're basically insinuating that they've let themselves go or whatever. That's all negative, but I'm not paying attention to the content. I'm kind of thinking, well, okay, the reason they're doing that is because they want people to buy papers. They want to reel people in. So, but that's the way I cope. And I'm not saying everybody would do the same thing, but that's I can more easily dismiss it. I mean, it still gets me down, particularly in recent times, obviously with COVID and the war in the Ukraine, and it's all very heavy stuff.
And I don't want to ignore those things that are happening, but I can't. There's only so much one can do. And the more I listen to these things and take it on board or just on a day-to-day basis, but it's not just, I was thinking, the sensationalism in terms of negativity rather than the world issues of earthquakes and wars and everything else. I'm thinking more like the talk TVs and the Daily Mails of this world. And it's just like, oh, come on. Why does everyone just have to be standing on a soapbox being so horribly negative? But maybe it's because we don't like things in others that reflect the things we don't like about ourselves. I don't know.
It could be. It could be that for some people it makes them feel better about their lives. I mean, if you look at it, oh God, however many generations ago, I mean, we needed to pay attention to negative stuff because the main negative stimuli would be informing us of danger and things that we had to be aware of. And so the positive stuff was kind of a nice a nice thing to sort of have in the background, but it wasn't, as you say, it wasn't as compelling. The problem is now we're disproportionately exposed to little bits of negativity, but our kind of makeup probably means that we're hardwired to really pay attention to it. And for some people, particularly like you, who've had that sort of childhood trauma, it's really hard to let go of.
Yeah.
And it's hard to see life being anything but anticipating.
But you had childhood trauma. I'll come back to it. You had childhood trauma. You do struggle with anxiety, and yet you're an optimist and don't focus on negativity. So as well as you being able to put into context a publication who's being sensationalist and saying, oh, they're just reeling people in, I'm not going to take it on board or read it, what else do you do? What can I learn? Teach me.
Well, I mean, I know this is very sort of basic, and it's not going to help you at all, so I probably shouldn't even say it.
Go for it anyway.
I don't have any desire to be negative. I don't.
It's not helpful.
There's no. I know exactly. Well, there you go. but there's no. I don't find it compelling, and I can't. I mean, I could try and work out why, but I've always.
It was quite a negative. Not negative as in bringing people down, but quite an atmosphere. If you grow up in a war with people who are emotional and put their heart on their sleeve and will talk about things in an emotionally negative way, did you just see all of those, that natural way of communicating in Iraq as a thing of, oh, I don't want to be like that? Or because your mum was quite a stoic person and wouldn't really show things even if she was feeling depressed or finding things a struggle? Was it that you learnt to shield it off like her? I mean, is it either of those? You're just going to say you're naturally not negative, aren't you? You're going to be really irritating.
I think there is an element of that. I think I've always had that. I don't know.
So therefore, it's not learned behaviour. I am naturally a negative person. So job done. Let's embrace who I am.
Yeah,
Go ahead and be negative, Beck. Don't worry about it.
I mean, if I look into it a bit more, I mean, perhaps there was an element of I suppose my mother, although she was quite stoic, she wasn't a negative person. I wouldn't say she was cheerful, but she didn't look on the negative side of things. She'd be very onwards and upwards and keep going. And although I found that aspect quite difficult, I spent a lot of time with mum, I rarely sort of saw her being defeatist or saying that she couldn't do something, or she just got on with stuff. And maybe there's an element of that.
Yeah, but I get on with stuff, and sometimes with a grudge.
But there wasn't a grudge with her.
Okay, yeah.
And I think that's where the little bit of luck perhaps I had in childhood is, despite all of that, everything going on around me, there was that slight sort of oasis at home where she was pretty unflappable.
I like you referring to it or her as providing that oasis and being able to shield you in a way. But that must have been an incredible job that she did as one person, despite her being your mother at home, when there's so much going on outside. And it's not just the war, but also, as you've talked before, about people in Iraq, that kind of Arab culture of being very vocal and very emotive and happy to, without any heaviness, but still happy to talk about the negative and sometimes do that wailing woe and everything else, that you managed to not take that on as a trait.
Yeah, I think she did do, with hindsight, she did do an amazing job at that. And there was, home, for all its ups and downs, often did feel fairly stable, I guess. And maybe that's all I needed to be able to stop me from focusing on the negativity. I wonder also, you talking about that sort of, particularly in Arab cultures, that tendency to express yourself and to talk about things quite openly. Maybe as a child, or maybe me specifically as a child, what I picked up on was the fact that they were expressing it in the first place. So even though it was negative, it was fairly clean.
That's
and
true.
Out in the open, and nothing would be really left in the tank. So going back to the whole bucket analogy, their buckets would have been overflowing, but they'd have an outlet. They'd be able to let some of that stuff out. And I think a lot of the time when you see what on the surface would be a similar thing, say in this culture, it's not really quite, it doesn't have the same sort of cathartic value. It's I
don't necessarily think it's as sincere. We don't go straight in with what's actually bothering us for fear of being judged for being negative or moaning or bringing people down. But so we'll possibly project and complain about what others have done and use somebody else's misdemeanor or something we've read in the paper or watched on television or whatever and kind of use that as the negative fuel, as a way to kind of exercise negativity. But because it's not our own, we're still holding on to it.
Yeah, and I think even in societies like the UK, similar societies where overall people are a little bit more reserved, perhaps more introverted, I think even here that everybody kind of knows at the back of their mind that they need to get rid of some of this stuff. And I think they make those sort of token gestures to do it, and it's quite a sort of a superficial way or a something disguised as something else or whatever it might be. So it seems like they're doing it, but it's to a lower level without as much of that sort of emotional content and without the directness. And so I can't imagine, because I don't really do that myself, but I can't imagine that it really does the job. I mean, if you've I don't want to say moaned in a particularly derogatory way, but that's, if you've complained about something on a low level, say you might be feeling particularly sad that morning, but you might talk to someone about, I don't know, it could be something really trivial, someone cussing you up when you're in the car or something somebody said to you randomly. I can see how it might be helpful in some ways, but really, are you actually shedding any of that sadness or doing anything with it? You're not really communicating to that other person that you're feeling sad and you'd like to change that, or you'd like to, move forward. You're
scratching the surface only, just giving the headline fact. Because actually, when you were saying that, I was thinking again about societal trends and things that we just do, and two of them in terms of individuals. So many of us have self-deprecating wit that we will put ourselves down for the sake of humour to help other people relax or get to know us. Or also that level of false modesty. What's wrong with being proud of what we've achieved or who we are or what our children are doing? Why does there have to be an element of false modesty? Like it wasn't that big a deal. Yeah, it was. Be proud of it. So actually, there are so many traits that, having grown up, especially in 80s Britain, where, oh, good grief, it was depressing. Everything was great. I swear everything was great. Even I don't understand
I don't think there was any colour at all, was there?
No, no. But that whole negativity in terms of self-deprecation, false modesty, awful stuff going on in the news and people only really talking about that. I don't remember having a light. Anyway, I think my big sister was a bit of a light. She does very well trying to be cheerful.
Yeah.
But in general, I think everybody just seemed a bit doom and gloom. And maybe that's where a lot of this comes from, where on a day-to-day basis, so I'm trying to kind of define my day-to-day in terms of being a negative person. As we've already said, I'll sigh a lot. I'll take that baggage with me so that a small thing can tip me over into trying to be cheerful, to just being like, oh, I've had enough, whatever, I need some time on my own. My favourite phrase, everybody, I need some time on my own. But Beck, what will help? Just let me have some time on my own. It's that glass half full very stereotypical analogy, but it kind of is.
Yeah.
It's feeding into that, or vice versa, not feeling good enough. Something goes well, I'll tend to dismiss it quite easily. Something goes wrong, I'll grab onto it with both hands and overthink it, overanalyze it, try and assume what someone might have meant or thought, or whatever, whether it's a person or whether it's just something that I've done myself.
Yeah.
There's far more strength. So I'm going to set myself a task. How do I not let that have the strength? And you're saying, for you, you're just not drawn to negativity, and you will avoid it if you've realised that people are trying to be negative. But hang on, sorry, I need to go back just 1 second. Bear with me. You're an empath. So when I'm with other people as an empath and they're feeling negative and there's that baggage, especially, is you're right, if they're holding on, they're not letting it go and they're superficially talking about something, but I can feel that there's something wrong, I absorb it. So my empathetic nature tends to be as a sponge, and then I feel terrible. But you're an empath.
Yeah.
So, but is it a case where it's an empath that you can tell how they're feeling, but you don't necessarily take it on?
It depends. I think there is. I think a lot of the time I do precisely that. I think I will feel it, but maybe as a sort of a self-protection mechanism, I don't really engage with it as fully and as openly as maybe you do. So I will know someone's feeling this, someone's feeling that. And
say, no thanks.
Kind of, yeah. Maybe it's a sort of a belligerence, or I don't know. But I mean, if catch me on a sort of a more vulnerable day, and then yes, I will take it on board. But I think, again, probably repeating myself, I think there's also the other way to look at it, which is, okay, say it's a given that you're an empath and you're going to take on board these negative moods, and perhaps even it might turn your day from being sort of an all right day to being a bit of you feel a bit fragile, whatever. But that doesn't mean that later in the day you can't do something that will make you feel cheerful again. Or
no. Well, something's been said. That's it.
No, I know. But maybe there's another setting, or But I think that's what in a sort of an accidental way I've ended up doing, is that even if my day starts off that way, I will put something in later on that makes me smile, makes me feel cheerful.
So you actively choose a task or activity or a music
Not
or a
actively,
program,
it just happens.
Something. Oh, okay. Oh,
and
wow.
I think there's associating me with the word balance is probably a bit of a weird one for you. But I think there is a sort of a natural tendency to balance for me. And it could be having two completely different parents, the sort of the Arab, maybe a bit more emotional, bit more little bit more heart on sleeve, negative dad, and the more stoic mother. Maybe that's kind of reflected in my head. So I can achieve balance. On a good day, I can achieve that kind of equilibrium. But I think that's what I do. And I mean, maybe I'd have to, maybe in future podcasts, I can talk a bit more about how I achieve that, or what kind of things I actually do, what steps I take. Because it's an unconscious process. I think it just happens. But if I look at it, in the grand scheme of things, I think that's what goes on. I don't think I necessarily take things on board a lot less than you do. As you say, I am an empath. But it's just, that's not, it doesn't just, it's not when that happens that everything's sort of set in stone and isn't malleable. I think I can come back from that. And I think maybe that's something, again, interesting for you. Maybe you can find a way of doing that yourself in your own way.
Yeah, I'm going to have to make a pledge, I think. I think in future podcasts we need to come back on this and see whether or not Beck's cheered the fuck up or not. And how do I do this?
Depends on the day, doesn't it?
Like I said, other things, extenuating circumstances can sometimes make it harder. But I like the idea of having... I've got to stop saying the word bucket, and I'm really sorry if you've been listening and you hadn't picked up on it, but it's been said a lot. So either way, I apologise. But having both of them and focusing more on the positive one and making an active or just conscious decision to place something positive in it, maybe.
Or even if it helps, I don't know, just thinking of it as a bucket that holds everything together. It doesn't have to be separate. I mean, maybe thinking of it as two separate buckets might overcomplicate it. But maybe everything goes into the same bucket.
No, I think I need 2 separate ones.
Okay, fine. You have to.
I have to.
Because
that way I can also choose, because I love images. I mean, imagining stuff. I can choose at the end of the day to empty out the negative bucket before I go to sleep. Like maybe I'll visualize it, because some of those things can help. I need to catch myself more when I'm thinking something that's habitual, that might have a negative connotation, like a slant or interpretation on something. And really seek to, I don't know, embrace the positivity a bit more. It's not just about being cheerful, but if somebody asks me how I am, I'll try and sidestep the false modesty or the self-deprecating wit or the quick try and find something that's common. Oh, the only thing that's common is the stuff that we've both heard in the news, or we've both seen in the weather, or we've both experienced, because, we all like a good moan. Maybe I'll be the one that tries to say something a bit more positive, not just been away recently.
And I know that obviously you're trying to wind the podcast up, but I'm going to bring you back in for a second. I just suddenly thought, because I just thought as you were talking, I think that's another key thing perhaps, is you talked about your bucket, and I'm going to say it again. It's just, I've got that Tourette's thing. I just want to keep saying bucket now. Bucket. But I think it's what that shows me in a way, and it reminds me of the fact that, as you say, you're a very, very sort of visual learner, visual thinker, visual everything, and I'm not. And so what works for me may not work for you, but maybe if your mind works very much off sort of imagery, and I mean, you will often say, if you're having a tough time, you'll have these really vivid dreams where all sorts of awful things are happening. And you play out.
Poor kids.
Yeah. Well, you might need to qualify that.
No, but, my dreams.
Yeah.
So and so died. So got maimed. So got kidnapped.
But you play it out on a sort of a very visual level. So maybe the key for you is to go down the route of visual imagery and sort of trying to imagine the story playing out in a different way in your mind. Because for me, that wouldn't work. Because
So what would work for you, just in case anyone's listening? I know, because you don't get negative. What's the point? What's the point of asking?
No, I can't. I'm not Teflon. It doesn't just bounce off me. No, I think for me, it's for me, I don't know how this relates, so this could be a complete dead end. But I'm not a visual thinker. I'm much more, I think, in terms of, what do I think of? Sounds? I don't know. I'm a sound thinker. I don't know, what am I on about? I suppose I think a lot in terms of emotions, sounds, feelings, but just not visually. So you
don't build a wall to say,
no, because I couldn't
block that out.
I couldn't imagine it.
Okay, of course, sorry.
I'm one of those people, I forget the name of it, where if you close your eyes and someone tells you to imagine a picture of a red heart or something in your mind's like, I can't do it. I can see it just about, and it's very fuzzy and indistinct, but it just doesn't work for me. I just can't.
Your dreams must be shit.
No, funnily enough, I can do it in my dreams.
Okay,
but when I'm awake, it's really limited. It's just, why am I closing my eyes and why is it so black? And that's it. So I'll have to think about that. There must be sort of ways in which I do it.
I'm just thinking non-image based, just in case there's someone else out there listening that says, I don't really imagine things. But, shall I wrap back up? Shall I start wrapping back up again? Shall I repeat what I was saying?
Go for it, yes. I'm sorry. Yeah.
You sure? Thank you. Yeah. So, 2 buckets, empty one of them at night time. Here comes my bullet list. Sidestep habitual behaviours that kind of drive the, just negativity, especially in terms of communicating with others. And smile more. I do smile. I don't know. I think I'm just going to have to start recognising, identifying times when I'm just doing it by habit. I don't hear me sighing. So you're going to have the joy of just continuing to point that out, which I also find a joy when you do.
You do, yeah. You love
I'm always very amenable to Maz pointing out when I'm being a bit negative. Yeah. I'm always like, am I really? Thank you so much for pointing it out.
I didn't realise. What would I do without you?
Tra-la-la-la-la.
It's exactly how it doesn't happen.
If you're listening and any of this has resonated, we'd love to hear from you. There are various ways. The first way is obviously you can find us on Twitter. It's a pathetically small Twitter profile at the moment where we're basically just publicising each episode as it goes live. But hopefully if you start listening to this later on down our journey, you'll actually find really good hints and tips and fantastic images and everything else.
I really like that tweet you did the other day.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
If you're listening to this via a podcast platform, we would really appreciate you subscribing or just giving a thumbs up if you like it. The more people we can get our podcast to, obviously, the better. And for us, actually, the objective is to, share our stories with as many people as possible who might find that it resonates with them and helps them to kind of look at life a bit differently. We're not in this for some big, we need 1 million subscribers and loads of money from it. It's actually more just, let's see if there are other people out there that can join the community. Mm-hmm. If you're listening to this via the Buzzsprout kind of link, the main link, perhaps find a platform that might work for you so that you can listen to it from that, because I think it also tracks in terms of stats and figures how many are listened to via Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can find us on all main podcast sites. But that's a plug. Apologies. I really appreciate it, especially because you've been listening to the whole podcast only right at the end. But any subscribing or thumbs up or listening via formal platforms would be amazing. And take care of yourselves and each other. I think that's all I have left to say.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.